This is Neil King from Random Acts of Cartooning, and this episode I'm going to draw Gene Simmons from Kiss. But first... Okay, hey everybody. So the influence for this specific episode is Mike Ploog, great artist from the 70s. He did things in the 80s and 90s. I mean, he's still doing things. I think he's still alive. But his great stuff were from the horror period for Marvel, and Ghost Rider is one of them that I've always really loved. So I like to look at his stuff unless I don't think I have the original copies of some of those titles. So I always get the essentials because they're just black and white. And this essential is showing some of the stuff that I really liked about his stuff. So when you see it, especially when he inks his own work, he has this kind of really different type of a style. It's just all this little detail that I really love, and it's great for horror. So images like this and that, the Ghost Rider character who I love. I love that kind of use of black. When you see it like this, you see all the skills it takes to be able to focus on something in the front compared to the back. He's using angles. I love all these kind of close-up things. Like, look at that scene. He's not a traditional artist. Like, he has all these parts to him. I guess he's a little Romita, everybody's a little Kirby. Maybe Steranko a little bit. All those like kind of artists like that, but to me it's like these images that I like the most. Great skull. He's really created something for himself. I remember reading these as a kid in elementary school. I loved them. But he didn't do a lot of them, and the issues for this were not very long. Like, he may have done 3 or 4 issues. Maybe he did some fill-ins. But he would move on to do The Werewolf by Night, and he may have done that first. I'm not sure which one came first. But America, I think, in the 70s had gotten really into some horror stuff. And I was obviously into all that. So all of these types of image, Satan and all that stuff, they're kind of playing off of it. And they were allowed to. Comics Code were allowing them to do stuff again. But I love his stuff. And it's just a singular vision. And he's great at horror. Mike Ploog. So thinking about Kiss, this was all happening right around that time. That's probably one of the big things with Kiss that we loved. It was all happening at the same time. And, this is great. Ghost Rider, Essentials, if you can get it. So good. Okay, so let's get started with this. Starting with a 80-pound watercolor paper I use for all of my convention sketches. So, as always, I take my Ticonderoga pencil and I get in some of my big shapes. Now, this is Gene Simmons' image. So I have drawn him many times, and I thought I would do maybe all of the Kiss members, because they're all so iconic. It's such a great graphic design. I mean, great characters, and I grew up with this stuff. So for me, I know the major stuff I've got to get in. And with him, I really play off of the whole demon thing. So really long tongue, ridiculously long tongue, and all this stuff. But Gene Simmons, and just like all the rest of them, there are only certain things that you have to get right, and that's that face makeup, that you have to be able to get their symbol right. So at this early stage, I just want to really just get in the big shoulders, long arms, like all the things, his fingers really long. I elongate him, a mannerist style, if you want to think of it that way. And I usually keep it as a simple color. So I'm just getting all the major shapes here as I move through this image. Okay, so I'm just kind of speeding this part up, just to kind of show you what I'm doing. Big shapes. I'm going to have the one leg up close to us, and the other one kind of disappears in the back, and very exaggerated gesture for Gene Simmons. And if you've seen any of the images of these guys, they're really great at keeping their characters. Like they really, really sell the whole idea of these characters. They're almost like superheroes in their own way. And but I always like with the Gene Simmons kind of demon character. It's important just to get him kind of exaggerated. And I was saying, like, just like Iron Man, all you have to worry about if you're going to do Iron Man is to make sure he's either yellow and red, and he might have something. It doesn't even have to be a circle on his chest, but some kind of a thing on his chest. And for this, it's for Gene Simmons, that's the important thing, is that the face makeup. So this symbol may as well be the S for Superman, like has to be kind of right. I've seen a little play off of it in different places, and so, but mostly it's very kind of specific. There's 3 points up there above the eye, and then the one off to the side, and then you bring off the other. So it's a symmetrical image, great graphic. They use it for everything, and so if you get that, then you've got him, and then you can put as many spikes or armor or whatever you want to on the body. His hair is kind of similar too. He has that kind of, it comes up off the head, and then it's longer on the shoulders and stuff. So you want to get that. But if you see anybody ever with that makeup, you're like, well, that's Gene Simmons. That's the thing. So especially at that time in the 70s, they really merchandised this stuff to a high degree. This is all sped up. You can see this that I'm doing here. But again, I'm trying to just, as I work with this stuff, I know my shorthand of the things that I'm drawing. I know in the ink stage, I'm going to kind of pull it together, maybe bring it back a little bit, maybe not as exaggerated, or even more so. And then I'll go into the ink stage. But as you can see, lots of ridiculous amounts of spikes on him. And it just has to make sense to me about where things are. I was going to put like a demon head on the knee, but I was going to, then I stayed with the traditional demon kind of boot, like with his foot, like they would have. It's super cool. Those things, I can't imagine how these guys walk around in these things on stage, but it's the eyes, and as long as you get that and the teeth, you're usually in a pretty good place. And this is kind of like armor. And a dragon, he's got all this stuff, the kabuki kind of character, but it's also based in so many different things. And it's evolved. Like the early stages, they probably were getting these ideas, and then the more successful they got, it seems like they just refined it. And his cape, like I think he used to have a little bit of a cape. I'm not sure, and now they have these kind of wings that are just great. He's just a great, and they have a comic book from it. I have someone I met, Amy Chu, like she does, she's a writer, and she's writing for Kiss. The comic book is still out there. So, they really merchandise it well. The whole Kiss Army thing, it's so great. So anyway, I'm going in there with my fountain pen, and that fountain pen has water-resistant ink, pretty much waterproof. Sometimes it'll come off a little bit, but not to a major degree. And again, this is for sketches, so any of these kind of things that happen, I try as much as I can to just build it inside it, because I'm just going to put watercolors right on top after I get my main inking done. So I'm getting all the little fine detail. And I could do this with maybe a little bit of a bigger marker, but this fountain pen I've really been using a lot recently, and I really like it. I use it for a lot of different things. So this is important this stage because if you don't get those crazy teeth on him, and I've get this incredibly long tongue on him also, you want to get all that kind of detail in while you can with that brush, with that pen. So I'm kind of moving around, and it's a ridiculously long tongue, but I like, you should just go with this whole idea. And I think that it just adds to, when I do the images of him, the magical kind of quality to this character that they've created for each one of them. So I always think, the Paul Stanley one with the, with the star on his eye, like all these guys, they have the characters and they've built them. As a kid, I remember they had that TV show, that Phantom one, which we loved so much at the time. And it was not good, but for a kid back then, especially as young as I was, it was perfectly good and it was great. So it's hard to look back on those things and try to say, wow, that just was no good and they didn't have any quality. But that they just didn't have, the ability to do something like that with the budgets they had, and they were at the peak of their powers. Like, they were so popular. I hope that they did. They just did as much as they could to go with this whole image that they made. Really, really well done. So, most of the stuff that they did was just high quality, and we all had their shirts and their posters and stuff. But as you can see, what I'm trying to do here is I'm just basically pulling in all the big detail for the hands, really exaggerated, super long hands. And, I tend to do very kind of squarish hands, fingers that is. And, but that's, to me, it's a stylistic thing I like to do. And I'm just moving around because, again, the gesture is just really out there. And so just blocking the fingers in. It's hard at these stages too, because I really look at this as a convention sketch. So I make decisions quickly, and at first I might want the fingers to be in a certain type of a shape, and then I'll change my mind and then move around. But it's a very exaggerated pose, and I'm just trying to get all of the feeling of that he's coming towards me. It's that big contrast is what I'm really looking for when I'm doing all this stuff. So I'm going to block in some of the really darks in there, and I just move up to a little bit of a thicker marker. This is Pentel brush pens, and it is also water resistant. And I really, you got to get this part in. It's got to be right. So for you to recognize this character, I might do my best just to make sure I'm taking my time with it, because I feel like I'm always in too much of a hurry with the convention sketch stuff. But if you have the good contrast to begin with, and you have that there, once I get in with my thicker brush, with the dry brush technique, then it's all kind of set up. So I've sped this one up so you can, so we'll just kind of move through it. You can see I'm just kind of quickly putting in these things. I know that once I get my the water color on top of this, I'm just going to build those darks anyway. So I don't have to put really deep darks in, at least the way I'm doing it. I know a lot of artists might put in all the darks in, the flat parts, and then just go in. But I kind of like the way the watercolors can build the darkest areas, so they're not just black. But no matter what I do, I'll go in with that big brush, and it's going to change the whole way that this thing looks. So this is the first part of it. And then I'll just go in with this really dry brush looking feeling and all the exaggeration that it builds. So I'm putting in the hair with this point. And it's just, again, it's supposed to give you this feeling of this magical quality of the character. And, it borders on horror, I suppose, this character. But, it's so great. Like every part of him kind of works, that whole design that they have of him. And I probably missed out on certain things. Like they probably added certain things. But when I look at it, this is what I'm looking at, is these major parts. He's got armor on. And I just building that chest plate the way I would do it. On stage, I'm sure he has some different variations of this thing. But for me, I like just going in and just getting little parts of it. So you get the idea that he's wearing something like that, and having all those spikes on it really helps out. So again, like the boots, they go from, I think, right around his knees all the way down, and it is supposed to look like metal. And with this kind of almost character in itself, with the head of that dragon head down there on his on the feet on the bottom. So I try to make it as much as conceptually like they're doing there. But if you do it in any kind of way that's close to the look, then you get the sense of it. And I'm sure, like I say, like he probably has variations of those boots that he's worn for different time periods. And because I doubt that he has the same exact one for all of it. But maybe he does, who knows? Again, just making my way through and getting the second boot. Now, I won't put the whole boot in there. I like the idea of it kind of going into eventually into nothingness, like a fog or something. So I'll just leave it. And when I finish the color, I'll indicate it's like he's coming out of a foggy area towards us, and then it kind of disappears. That the other foot. I don't want to put him like he's on a showroom or something, like coming towards us. Or I just like it kind of disappearing. Sometimes I'll put the other foot in, but for this specific one, I left it. Sorry, you can see all the contrast here. Almost at the finished part of this, and then I'm just going to be moving right into the color. Okay, everyone, as you know, I am a working cartoonist, so we are talking about the holidays right now. So don't forget to go to my Amazon site, where you'll see some of my different types of books that I have. Strange Tales for Boys and Girls, that's an all ages book. Snowmen in the Springtime, all ages. 3 Little Pigs in a Blanket. These are all things that all kinds of kids would like. Limited color. This is a series that I did. The Deep End. Spaghetti Eddie with the meatball eyes. And My Parents Are Ninjas. That's kind of a 3 tandem thing that I had done. Also, I have more educational types of books. Who Stole All the Heads at the Met? Fun book. All kinds of art history. Then I have some more of my adult books. These were online books that I compiled as graphic novels. Kill Me or Die, Abby in Hell, and Forbidden Planet. Different format, black and white interiors, lots of fun. And then my most recent, Shock, Let There Be Fright. Again, all the things that I'm doing, all my episodes, everything I'm doing here and all of my things, it's really about getting my books. So support me in the holidays and get to friends or someone in your family some of these books. Thanks. All right, here we go. So as usual, when I'm doing a convention sketch, I just use my Prang semi-soft watercolors, and I go in there with the lightest value of the color I'm going to use. First, I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to get rid of the lines that are under there. There's not a lot under there, and sometimes I'll even forget because I've gone over it so much with my ink that you can't see much of the line at all. But just in case, I clean that up really fast. And I'm going to get right in there with the lightest value of a red. Now, with the characters, like when I was a kid, they started off, they made that comic book. It was like one of the first kind of things like this. They already knew they had the perfect kind of characters, and it would work really well with comics. But I remember they had this picture of them all giving like a pint of blood to put into the red that would be in the comic, which was a great kind of an idea. I could still see it as a kid, and it's just a funny, great idea that you would do, especially back then, to get people to be like, in on the idea of it and keep that magical quality of everything. So when you're doing this, you still want to keep some type of a light source and try to keep it consistent. And but when you work on the bottom layer, just leaving a few places that are white, and then everything else is just going to be in this very light red that I have there. And it's, I'm just trying to build a feeling with this stuff. So all of that, the shoulders and all that stuff, and if it's metal, you got to have some areas that are white. So you don't want to go over every bit of that of the armor, especially in those boots. So I'll try to leave one side usually white, and then I'll just go in for all the other parts with the lightest red, and just to show myself, like I'll go, all right, this is going to be deeper, and in the darkest areas where I'll have that red, because I'm just going to build right on top of that when I build it with some blacks and grays. So again, everything is about building contrast and having him seem like he's coming towards us. So in each parts of this piece, as I do it, that's definitely one of the main concerns that I keep doing. So I squint my eyes and I look to see if I'm getting the contrast I need. Because at first it seems fine when you're doing a light and a medium, but as soon as you put a deeper value in, then it gets you a truer understanding of what's coming in front and what's going behind. So in these parts, especially with that kind of winged cape thing between his arms, that thing's got to be pretty deep and dark. You want to still see it, but you got to know that it's got to go behind that arm that's coming towards us, as if he's coming to grab us. So for that to happen, you got to have the contrast to push everything behind. And especially without having any darks on this yet, I just know, and the way I work is I'm going to come back and make it darker. So I'm still just working with the color. It's just pure red, but darker and darker, less water, starting to build that background a little bit, get a sense of it behind him. Like I was saying, I want to build this thing as if he's coming out of like a fog or some type of a mist, and makes it a little more dramatic. And this is where it all comes together, like all this history of the character. As a kid, I just loved all the stuff, and they've just continually done the stuff. They've done the hard work, and they're still around doing the act, and I think they may be ending it soon, perhaps, but I'm sure there's plenty of vehicles that they'll deal with this, and they could have they may already have some bands that go and get dressed up as them and do all the songs. They have a lot of songs that they have. So here I am going in with the darks finally. And right away, like I'm building right on top of those reds. So I'll leave some of the reds by themselves, and others I'll just go right on top. But for that tongue to look like it's poking out in front, like there's all that stuff you got to be aware of. and I just keep building and building until it seems like it's there. And I do, as a sketch, I think these are it kind of works because there's no, especially with a form like this, I don't think he's as solid as if I had just done him in very flat values. I think by doing this in this regard, he really kind of pops in a different way, and it gives me the sense of him just being otherworldly. And again, by adding that on that trunk of his body to make that darker, all of a sudden that tongue is popping out a little bit more. It's not overbearing the amount of grays on there. I just think that it's there, and if I can stay consistent with it and get rid of the things that are leading my eye away, I think that it's a nice technique for comic characters and things like that. It's like I was bringing up the Mike Ploog. He's the one that did Ghost Rider and stuff. All that was happening at the same time. I'm sure Gene Simmons and all these guys saw all of those types of images and are inspired to make some of these characters that they made. Alice Cooper and all that stuff. Those guys were doing these things too. These weren't the first kind of horror kind of guys to do this, but they really did it on a worldwide scale. They really refined it and showed everybody how it could be done. So a lot of bands base this kind of stuff off of them. So again, I'm kind of moving pretty quickly with this. Now I'm really looking for the contrast, especially for the background around his feet and stuff. You want it to seem like he's coming out of that, like he's stepped up into our area. And I'm just getting rid, you can see I'm getting rid of a lot of that too much white area that's it's taking your eye away from the main focus. So by putting some of these darks in the background and just give it a little bit of value, that leg pops out a little bit more because it has some white in it. But now I'm just like adding that deepest, darkest areas for the middle of it. So the outsides shine and the inside just stays with that area. So you can see I'm just like not dark enough. I want them to pop more. So right up to the very end, I'll just keep doing it until it seems right. And again, I always remind people to just squint your eyes when you're looking at stuff. Like, what are you seeing? Do you see the contrasts? And even for that arm, like if I put that in, you can see the hand pops out a little bit more because now the arm recedes back a little bit. So if you have a light, medium, and dark for the things that are up closest to us, they'll be seen for something that's either very dark or it's a medium and a light, and they have to recede back because that's the way it is. It's the way we see things. So I'm just like making decisions where I'm like, do I need to see some of this around the legs? What can I get rid of and what can I keep in there? Coming right down to the end of this. I don't say like every single convention I'll draw one of him. Like I had a Gene Simmons in my book for a little while, and then somebody eventually they'll just, whether they even know who they are or not, they'll be like, you're drawn to this demon character. You've seen him before, and whether people have copied the Kiss stuff to make their kind of horror characters or some MCU character that looks a lot like a Gene Simmons or Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, all that stuff, Peter Criss, like all these characters. I just think it's worth exploring each one of them. And I'm getting ready for some conventions, so I like to have them in my book for when people come around and they're just looking for something that they haven't seen. And so this is either people who buy these kind of things or the ones who either grew up with it or or they've just seen something recently about these guys, and he publicizes this so much, Gene Simmons, that you're never too far away from it. So all the new generations may not know their music because there's only 2 or 3 major songs that people might know of them. But when you have those images, it draws people, even just whether it's going to the shows or buying some kind of a thing that comes off of it. So again, this is like the deepest dark areas that I'm now putting in. And I'm just squinting my eyes looking at it. Like, it's hard to end it sometimes. Just like, should this just be done? Because you can take away too much eventually. And I find like sometimes I'll fight these things at the end to decide if it's actually done. And then just move on to the next thing that you're going to do. But especially if you're at a convention and you have a list of images you have, sometimes it's easier to just let things go. But if you don't have something before it, then you just got to look at it. So anyway, thanks for watching, and this was fun, and hope to see you next time. Make sure you're subscribing. See you soon.